And the reason why that we were named Stock Exchange of the Year is that we take a multi-asset approach to green finance. So from an equity side, we're the most international exchange in the world in terms of number of foreign companies listed. We have more than 100 companies listed from the US and Canada. We have dozens from Latin America as well, of all sizes, from 10 million up to 10 billion of size. Just to give you an example, we've had 4 healthcare IPOs from the US come to London in the past 6 weeks. We had the largest North American tech IPO that has ever happened in London occur just a few months ago. That was for a company called AlphaWave from Canada. And as I say, we have dozens of companies listed from the US, from Latin America, from Chile, from Brazil, from Argentina. So the region is really a big focus for us. On the debt side, we are a leader in green transition bonds. As an example, the first sovereign green bond to happen from Latin America was the Republic of Chile, and they decided to list that green bond in London. Also had sustainable bonds from the United Mexican States. That shows we're a leader in green finance. And finally, on investment funds, I just wanted to point out that the UK, London is a very strong market for the listing of public investment, closed-end investment funds. And we have more than 30 that are focused on green asset strategies with a market cap worth more than $20 billion. These are focused on wind, energy, storage, on solar, and they are focused in places like Brazil and in the US. And in fact, given this is a webinar about green hydrogen, you'll be interested to know that we had an announcement this week from an investment fund that is strategies solely focused on investment in green hydrogen projects, and they're seeking to raise more than $300 million in a London IPO. So there's a real opportunity to finance projects in the Latin American region through the various multi-asset approach that we have. So hopefully, you'll look to London to finance projects. And I just wanted to finally, move on to the introductions from the team that are here today to talk on the panel. So if I can pass over to Sebastian to introduce himself. Sebastian.
Hi, how are you, Chris, and how everyone that is joining us today? My name is Sebastián Augavir from Guerrero Olivos. I am partner at the energy team and environmental team. So, Chris, I don't know if we move to another one or I do a brief introduction.
No, I mean, if you just want to tell us a little bit about your background, Sebastian, and then we'll move on to Carolina, just, with a bit of your history and your experience.
Carolina?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolina Meneses. I'm a senior associate at Rabasa Alcázar and Las Casas, based in Lima, Peru. My practice focuses basically on environmental issues and extractive resources regulation. From the last years, I have an LLM at Dundee University and working for both private and public sectors. Thank you.
Please, this is Ricardo. I am Ricardo Castañeda. I am based in Buenos Aires, and I am a partner with Becar Varela. I am a member of the energy team of Becar Varela and the corporate and M&A team. Formerly, I was the general counsel to YPF Luz. YPF Luz is a power generation company owned by YPF and General Electric, and is one of the largest players in terms of thermal and renewable power in Argentina.
Well, hello guys, good morning. My name is Newton. I'm a partner at Matos Filho here in Brazil. I'm headquartered in Rio. I'm focused on energy and natural resources and infrastructure in general, more from a transactional side and regulatory as well. And I'm happy here with the invitation, and I think will be a very nice chat today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alejandro Gesino, working for Fraunhofer
Alejandro?
IEE in Germany. I am based in Argentina right now in Mar del Plata city. I have 24 years experience in the business in the energy sector, working for the R&D institution, public institution in Germany. Particular myself, PhD from the University of Kassel, professor from the Renewable Energies Academy in Berlin. And now currently responsible for the activities of the Fraunhofer IEE Institute in Argentina.
Great. Thanks to all of you for your introductions. What we're going to do now, we're going to have each of you just spend a couple of minutes talking about the hydrogen and clean energy transition frameworks in each of your countries. And I think we're going to start where I think Chile is a very interesting example. So we're going to start with Sebastian. Sebastian, can you just give us a few words on what's happening in Chile and how that's interesting for the region?
For sure, and I want to take the opportunity also to thank Marco Zavala, who is the leader behind the scenes of this webinar today. Chile is dreaming big in terms of green hydrogen. We have a declared goal of produce the cheapest green hydrogen by 2030. And to be one of the most relevant exporters of green hydrogen in the near future. So it's a good question to ask why Chile, that is such a small country, is so committed to green hydrogen. And I think that the answer metaphorically can be gave by the hydrogen itself that has learned us, teach us that the size is not relevant in terms of energy capacity or potential. And if we try to explain why Chile is so committed or so ambitious in its goal, I think it's a combination of factors. One factor is from the energy transition that we have faced in the last decade. If you go back to 28, you will see a very concentrated energy matrix, few players and heavily dependent to fossil fuels. And now in 2021, we have a much more diversified matrix with different players, different sizes, different technologies. And I think that clearly set the table for this next step, which is green hydrogen. Also, the reason why we are so enthusiastic with this sector is because we see and we have identified a big potential in terms of our renewable energy capacity. According to the calculations of the Ministry of Energy, we have the potential to install 70 times the installed capacity we have today. And of course, that potential is driven by radiation, by solar in the northern part of Chile, by the wind that we have in the south. And so we have that potential, but at the same time, we do realize that we are a small country and our energy consumption is limited. So we need to figure out how to produce something that we can export. And there is where the green hydrogen is the point that is matching the dots. And finally, it's not only potential and renewable energy, but it's also that we are every day more aware of the importance of sustainable development, on fighting against climate change and reduce greenhouse emissions. And if we realize that, at least in Chile, more than 70% of the greenhouse emissions are from the energy sector and 11% are from the transportation sector, we really find this opportunity to use our renewable energy potential to do the electrolysis that allow us to separate, of course, the hydrogen from the oxygen and to use this energetic power. And finally, it's important to say that this is not only a goal or a dream. Chile, I think, is doing the right things. just as a highlight, and then we can go in details in the Q&A round, is that Chile launched in November 2020 our Green Hydrogen National Strategy, which is kind of a roadmap of where we are today or where we want to be in 2050. We are adapting our regulation for this new sector. In early this year, we enacted the energy efficiency law, where we granted powers to the Ministry of Energy so they can design and implement this new regulation. We are also aware that financing is a big part of the industry, and in earlier stages is also obviously more important. That is why Corfo, which is the National Development Agency of Chile, has called for a financing process to award $50 million by the end of this year to electrolyzers projects that will enter into operation not far away, but in 2025. So we will see concrete projects very close by. And also, I think that Chile is trying to find alliances. Chile has executed during the last semester agreement with Singapore that could be an important buyer of green hydrogen, also with Germany to exchange experiences, technologies, and also one agreement that I found particularly interesting is the agreement reached with the Port of Rotterdam, because if you want to be a relevant player from this corner of the world, logistics are key, and that's why we are figuring out how to transport in an efficient way this green hydrogen to the world. And finally, one thing is policy, our strategy, regulation, financing, partnerships, and also the good news is that this is not just papers. We are seeing the first pilot projects to become a reality in Chile. We have this project in the south, in Punta Arenas, which is an e-methanol plant that was recently approved, and it's a combination between companies like Siemens, Enel, Porsche, HIF, ENAP, and also in the last weeks, we have seen this alliance between ENGIE and Walmart to put in place a green hydrogen facility in a distribution center here in Santiago. So I think that things are moving in Chile, and we are very enthusiastic about talking and exchanging experience in this sector. That will be Chris as an introduction.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Perhaps we can move up to Carolina now to talk about what's going on in Peru.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Sebastian. Regarding Peru, we can say we are behind other countries in the region in this aspect. The only electrolysis plant we have now is used to reduce the levels of sulfur in our everyday use fuels. However, there is no plan or prospects to use the green hydrogen in the future in our country. And that plants us a very important questions of what we want to do as a country in terms of this type of industry. It is important to analyze not only the processes of other countries in the region regarding this issue, but also to see what of these good examples we can use and implement in our country, and how we are going to implement them, considering especially the individual context things we have to take care of Peru, predominantly the geographic issues of our country. And therefore, as there is no regulation regarding this issue in the country, and we have to start thinking about this. It is important to think in terms of a public policy. What are the steps we need to consider and what the issues we need to consider in order to implement this type of policies in the country? First of all, what are the investment costs? If there is a market, not only internal, but also external market, as Chile is thinking about now, how are we going to use the green hydrogen in our country? What is the infrastructure that is required? And how much that infrastructure costs? What are the benefits and the guarantees that most of the investors might need from the country? And also we need to be especially careful thinking about the environmental and safety issues that need to be taken care of in issuing this policy. And what is the type of participation of the private sector the country would want? And also basically considering that there are some projects within the region, we need as a country who's, as I said, behind others in the region, we need to know what other people are doing, what we can implement in our country, and when are we going to do that? Because it is better to start thinking about it now, that it is possible and feasible, rather than thinking about this issue later on when most countries in the region are already up in the car and we are basically going to be behind all of this. The possibilities of this green hydrogen are just amazing. They are basically, it's as Sebastian said, it is sustainable, it is renewable, it is completely versatile and transportable, which means green hydrogen represents a very good strategy from every nation thinking about cleaning their industries and so on. However, in Peru, we are only focusing basically on renewable generation of electricity. And as we can see, we're one step behind what Chile is doing right now, because Chile is already thinking about what to do with the energy they have left from eolic and sun projects, and that's the step we need to take in order to think as a country on what we can do with our energy possibilities and thinking about these ones in the future. And just to summarize, as this issue is basically the consideration of a new public policy in the country, we need to take all the previous steps Chile has already taken to see how easy it is for us as a country to implement such type of industry in Peru, and what are going to be the costs and the guarantees that the government will need to grant the potential investors in this area.
Great. Thank you very much, Carolina. Perhaps we can move on to talk about Argentina.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Well, I wanted to start by saying which is the potential that Argentina has in terms of production of hydrogen, because Argentina has a huge potential for production, but the problems that Argentina is facing right now are more economical than in terms of resources that the country can devote to these projects, no? And Argentina, as you may know, has a long extensions of land, mainly in the south, in Patagonia, where the wind factor capacity is one of the best in the world. As I don't know if the audience know, but for example, YPF has a wind farm there, which it has one of the world records in factor capacity, nearly 60% factor capacity. Also, the provinces in the north, they have very, very good resources in terms of solar power. And Argentina has a history, a long track record in terms of the oil and gas industry. You know, most of the big players in the world have operations in Argentina. So Argentina or the hydrogen, let's say, industry could benefit from the oil and gas industry, because Argentina has formed very, very good technicians that they can easily switch to work for a hydrogen industry, no? Also, Argentina has a very extended gas pipelines where hydrogen can be transported through a blend with natural gas. And Argentina is in the region is ahead in terms of nuclear power, no? And nuclear power can be used also for pink hydrogen. Having said that, although Argentina has all these resources, we are not as ahead as we would have liked in terms of development of the hydrogen industry, no? We are behind Chile in this sense. Argentina was one of the first countries in the world to have a legislation about hydrogen. The first legislation regarding hydrogen is dated 2006, but no developments or only one development was made after that legislation was issued, mainly because the technology was not ready at that time, or perhaps that legislation needed more debate and needed to be adapted more to the industry, no? Because that legislation was issued together with the renewable law, and mainly what the congressman did was to somehow copy the renewables law into a hydrogen law, no? So, but in the Macri administration, Argentina started again to look at hydrogen, no? For instance, Argentina signed a memorandum of understanding with Japan. You know, Japan, Germany, and South Korea are looking at Argentina right now because they know that in the future they will need to import hydrogen, and they are looking the places in the world where you can find the best resources, and Argentina is within those countries. And this year, 2 months ago, Argentina launched the discussion to have a strategy for hydrogen in 2030. No, the Council, Economic and Social Council of Argentina, made a summit like 2 months ago, where Alejandro was one of the speakers, and gathered representatives from the Congress, from the opposition, also the ambassador from Germany, Japan, and South Korea participated in the discussion, and even President Fernandez closed the discussion with remarks stating that he would like to have a roadmap by the end of this year and a strategy for hydrogen. No, so nowadays in Argentina there is a discussion around how to build the legal framework and the conditions for growing hydrogen. For example, one of the congressmen for the opposition, Mena, has introduced a bill in the Congress to modify the old law, because the old law is expiring this year. The old law contained fiscal incentives that they are expiring this year, so we would need a new law in place to continue the development of hydrogen. In terms of projects, Argentina has one of the first projects in the world in terms of hydrogen. It's a project near Comodoro Rivadavia in the province of Chubut, a company called Hichico. It's a hydrogen plant built with 2 electrolyzers and a wind farm of 6.3 megawatts. And that was the first pilot, and the company that developed that project was aiming to, at some point, export hydrogen from Argentina. So in terms of let's say, market developments, that is what is happening right now in Argentina. And well, there there are discussions, and we can analyze this in the Q&A part of the session. But Argentina needs to make some changes and need to issue some incentives in order for investment to come, taking into consideration the economical situation of Argentina, the lack of financing, and the restrictions for the inflow and outflow of money that are currently in place in Argentina.
Great, thank you. That's an excellent overview, Ricardo. Perhaps we can go over to Nilton now to talk about what's happening in Brazil.
Thank you, Chris. I think that I have two comments on what Sebastian said. First, as Carolina told, Brazil is in the end of the line. I think Chile is way ahead than the other countries here. And the second one is that you said that you didn't have anything to export. Brazil is the opposite, right? We have a very strong oil and gas outlook, right? And that makes hydrogen kind of a second option still. But in any event, just giving some data, the energy matrix of Brazil currently, right? Renewables already correspond to almost 50% of our energy matrix, and our power matrix, right? The one that we convert energy into the power grid, it was already 83%. So Brazil is already it has already a lot of renewables here. So, but still, the government's in our strategic plan, that as Chile said, to 2050, our outlook is still to 2050, but we are way ahead than Chile. But in the outlook, the Brazilian government already sees hydrogen as a disruptive energy. So they are already foreseeing that hydrogen will take a very big chunk on our energy matrix. Overall, in 2002, actually 2005, Brazil started thinking about hydrogen. So the Brazilian Energy Council, which is a specific committee within the government that thinks about energy, they started saying something about hydrogen, but very, very like guidelines to the future, nothing very, very strong. In 2012, there was an incentive, a research and development incentive by the National Oil Agency that I can explain later, but it's basically part of the production on the pre-salt and other offshore areas is converted into credits for actually loan lines, basically to companies to do R&D. So in 2012, we had something like that. But only in 2020 is that the outlook came for 2050, and they actually recognized that we need to start running with hydrogen. So from 2020 to now, we have seen more discussions on hydrogen, especially more incentive. It's like renewables, especially hydrogen, is now incentivized to actually receive R&D funds. And right now, at any time now, we should have a national hydrogen plan. We have 5 ministries talking about that. It should be around July, early August, a sketch, or let's say a first draft of that national hydrogen plan. That being said, what the government's been saying a lot is that Brazil will not only focus on green hydrogen. They see hydrogen as a path that we will take, like the investment on infrastructure itself, like whatever they're going to do. Hydrogen can be any of these. So whatever is already installed, when green hydrogen will come to its peak potential in Brazil, that it will have already infrastructure for storage, for transmission, and etc. So that's something that Brazil is considering, and they are seeing within the outlook that the next 10 years probably Brazil will take more advantage of blue hydrogen, which is actually from the conversion of natural gas, because of course our big oil and gas natural gas production, especially from the pre-salt. There's a lot of gas to be monetized, and hydrogen could be blue hydrogen could be a solution for sure. So they're seeing that within the next 10 years, probably blue hydrogen will play a more relevant part. Although green hydrogen is highly incentivized by the government so far. That's my humble opinion. I think that green hydrogen will be here in Brazil tied to big projects. So we will have either hydrogen to power projects similar to gas, LNG to power, right? Gas to power projects. There will be projects related to the production of ammonia, because Brazil, being a rural, big rural commodity exporter, that makes total sense because of our plants and our agro background, right? And I think that these will probably be the focus of a green hydrogen, like specific projects to really dump a lot of energy and have green hydrogen as an outcome. There are already some projects already thinking about really making hydrogen for export to Europe. There's one project that's being discussed about that. It's something interesting as well. But coming back here to next the challenges, right? Brazil there's no single authority for hydrogen, so far is a shared competence. Brazil is actually relying a lot on the National Oil Agency and the National Power Agency, right? ANP and ANEEL. They're still being spearheading the discussions. That means that there will be either a shared competence, or Brazil will create a new agency to regulate hydrogen itself. That this is probably part of the next chapters. But there's still a lot of uncertainty on who will have the pen to actually authorize some projects. How exactly we will put that forward. The environmental authorities are not that far. That will be a challenge for the pioneer projects for sure, like proving that hydrogen is safe if it's next to urban areas. I'm pretty sure that the environmental authorities here will be will have a very hard look on the projects as well. And just to finalize here my 5 minutes, there's so far what I can say in Brazil is that we have funds for research and development for when it involves renewables, and hydrogen is being a goal from the government. So I think that this is something that Brazil can offer to companies, and that's something that we can definitely explore, while the rest is still being discussed by the government. Chris, I think that was my 50 cents on hydrogen here in Brazil.
Thanks a lot, Nilton. That was interesting. And perhaps we can move finally to Alejandro to discuss his views. Obviously, he'll have both an Argentine and a more international perspective.
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Well, we have two perspectives to be analyzed. One of them is the international market of hydrogen, let's say the trigger of all producers, the off-takers. Since many years, we have been talking about hydrogen and potential in the region. Brazil, Argentina, Chile, also Uruguay is in the list. So some certain countries with basically huge potential due to their renewable energy resources and water availability. And these were certain of investment waves, so to say, people coming to a region asking to produce hydrogen. But now, why we are so strong in this industry, and you see what Sebastian said about Chile, and also what Ricardo is saying about Argentina, and also Nilton in Brazil. The thing is, what we are seeing is that the off-taker has waking up. We have a consumer. We have liquidity, so to say. We have the money in the hand of the off-taker willing to buy hydrogen. I would like to describe the German situation, the German strategy for green hydrogen. Basically, took Germany a year and a half after the deadline to publish it, because there was a discussion between the ministries the economy ministry and the environment ministry about which kind of green hydrogen they should buy. First of all, we can summarize in 4 statements. I will try to stick to my 5 minutes, and then of course I am open for questions. The first thing we have to analyze is that in Germany we have to import 80% of the whole hydrogen Germany needs. Germany doesn't have energy and water to supply itself with green hydrogen. The green hydrogen economy will be developed, and this is done and acknowledged by the German government. The second thing is that Germany only will import green hydrogen from green economies, not countries which are brown or dark in terms of CO2 footprint, and with specific projects of green hydrogen just for making business. Germany is saying, I will import green hydrogen from green economies. That means green countries committed to the environment and to the energy transformation, energy transition, so-called. So finally, the last thing is that this green hydrogen should not increase inflation in the European Union or, of course, in Germany. That means the economy of scale of the green hydrogen to be produced is really huge. That's why you see Sebastian saying that the target of Brazil, of Chile, is not saying very specific about the volume. Chile is speaking about prices, because Chile is saying, I need to be competitive. It's not an issue that I can sell the green hydrogen, and because it's green, I can sell it wherever the price I would like to. I need to compete to the current prices in the current economy. So the countries are very clever, I would say, setting a target towards the prices, which are indeed a matter of the scale of the production of this economy of scale. That's why the world now is looking to the region, I would say, and now speaking about Argentina and the potential of the country, very specific, I think was part of your question, Chris, is below the parallel 42 south, Argentina has the largest set of land, of fixed land where wind is blowing, and this is the Patagonia, with a huge amount of water without any human intervention, meaning water dropped to the Atlantic Ocean every day. That means makes the country a very competitive country for the production of economy scale produced green hydrogen, meaning that green hydrogen is not going to be the same in $26 or $4 the kilogram of green hydrogen. We cannot say it's because of green, we can buy it at whatever the price we would like to, because it's going to increase inflation. The green hydrogen is going to be mixed with natural gas in the European Union gas system, and they want part of this, the prices, to be committed to this, and basically it's very, very important and relevant, the matter of economies of scale. I would say, for my final 2 words, is we need economy of scale from our region. It's not just being green, it's not just green hydrogen, it's a matter of prices and free on board prices in the customer, in the off-taker side. So that would be my first intervention, and of course I can answer any question.
That's great. Thank you, Alejandro. So the audience can submit questions via the Q&A, and we'll pass those on to the panel. So I think also a couple of questions, though. Perhaps I can talk to Sebastian first. Can you talk about some of the projects that are happening in Chile, and also, you know, who the players are and that are involved, and also what kind of incentives, or, you know, just from in general, but also from a financing perspective? You mentioned this a little bit in your remarks. What kind of financing incentives and support the government is providing in order to get these projects off the ground?
Thank you, Chris. I think that I want to take a second to link with Alejandro's presentation. I think that makes a lot of sense to me, in terms that I talked before about this green hydrogen strategy that we have, but was not only about, of course, having this potential, but if you see the figures, the numbers, This document contains levelized costs of the green hydrogen, seeking a 1.5 US dollar per kilogram by 2030, and the projection for 2050. So we are trying to find our competitive way to participate of this market, and also thinking in how we put that green hydrogen abroad is why we are discussing a little bit about vessels, ports, agreements, because we do realize that at the end, we will have to find off-takers that are willing to buy our green hydrogen. And the second issue related to Alejandro's presentation is that we are combining this potential with this new brand of our economy, this green energy economy, and trying to see this strategy in combination with our decarbonization plan, with our renewable energy matrix, with our greenhouse emission reduction deposited in the international agreement. So it's kind of a new brand that we. And when he said that now Germany is buying or needs to buy 80% of their hydrogen, it's kind of switching the coin. In the past, we have to buy all our energy sources. So that is why we are enthusiastic, because we are seeing an opportunity to move the arrow the other way around. And in terms of projects, we are seeing good players and big players, as I said before, Siemens, ENGIE, HIF, Porsche, Enel, ENAP, and others. And some also retail companies, Walmart, is trying to also find how they can be more competitive in a green economy in their distribution centers. So we are seeing sophisticated players. We do know that pilot projects require some extra help. That's why this Corfo, which is our development agency, is calling for this financing to grant $50 million per project. The maximum per project is $30 million, but with the idea of having those electrolyzers operating in Chile by 2025. And also we are seeing in the environmental assessment system some projects being approved. So it's a lot of movement in terms of agreement, partnership between private and important companies, and also trying to bring knowledge. When I read the agreement reached by Chile and Germany, was not only about exports, but also about exchanging experiences and technologies, trying to building internal capacity in this new segment. So that will be, and just to finalize, Chris, this national strategy is also generous to contribute in identification of segments, mining potential consumers, heavy trucks, buses, ammonia for the chemical industry, in the agricultural. So it is also trying to identify where are the buyers of the off-takers, and that can make this business working well.
Thank you, Sebastián. That's a very helpful answer. Submit questions via the Q&A and we can ask those to the panelists. In fact, we have one, which is for Nilton. To what extent has BNDES been involved in the financing of green hydrogen projects in Brazil, and do we see a role for them going forward?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ramon. BNDES, one of the many credit lines that they have is to fund infrastructure and energy projects, right? So this is within the scope of BNDES. what's happening is that the projects that we have in Brazil are still in very preliminary phases. They are still in memorandums of understandings, the studies, and etc. The financing time is not yet there, so the experience in BNDES financing hydrogen is non-existent because we're not there yet. But I'm pretty sure the BNDES will play a very important role, especially if in the hydrogen plan that the government is making, it's considered to be a priority. That definitely BNDES will be one of the main roles for advancing that. However, to be very honest, the government is saying that they don't have money to put their own money in the project, so they will count on the private sector to actually put that on board. But I don't believe that actually excludes what the BNDES role as they do in any other infrastructure project here in Brazil.
Right, thank you, Nilton. I just want to direct a question to Ricardo and Alejandro, if I may. We've had a lot of discussion about blue versus green hydrogen, and then obviously Alejandro said that countries like Germany are saying we only want to take green hydrogen from green countries. What's the dynamic going to be going forward for the choice between blue and green hydrogen?
Ricardo, do you want to answer first?
No, go ahead, please.
Well, the reality is, depending on the country and the side of the world you are, renewable energies are exposed to subsidies, to prices, and to the reality of the economy. When you mix up green hydrogen in an economy like European economy, different in the prices made it make very sensible, but maybe it's competitive when you speak about $2 to $3 the kilogram, even $4. Because of the differences between green hydrogen and the CO2 footprint technologies. In Argentina, you have Vaca Muerta as a large, incredible resource of natural gas, making the gas extremely cheap. That means when you see the consumption of the hydrogen matrix in Argentina, you need to analyze the following. 92% of the hydrogen being consumed in Argentina nowadays is consumed by the oil and gas industry. Basically, for the fuels, for the car fuels. That means in some cases they produce it nearly for free. Of course, they are talking about gray or black or brown hydrogen. That means hydrogen with CO2 emissions, implying CO2 emissions. But in this case, doesn't matter because the economy is not challenging, it's not putting any taxes on CO2 technologies or green technologies. That means when you speak about a transition between blue hydrogen and green hydrogen, you need to think about the prices of the economy you are talking about and how the fuels are exposed or not to reality. Said in a very easy words for our audience is you are comparing apples with apples or apples with oranges. We always say it's the same. And unfortunately, in countries like Argentina, but in other countries as well, the electricity system and the energy system in many cases is still comparing apples with oranges, with peanuts, and with bananas. That means you have 5 different comparisons, not only 2. That makes the thing more complex. There is a paper around circulating how many things are being compared which are not comparable. And they say you are comparing cars of 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels, and 6 wheels. And this is not possible to be compared. That means when you say Vaca Muerta is there, it might be a big opportunity to see a transition to use the gas, but at the same time it's a challenge and a threat for the green hydrogen. You have indeed, and I try to make it shorter, there is a market for ammonia for the chemical industry because those ones are commodities. And those commodities are exposed to CO2 footprint taxes worldwide. When you export ammonia, you export green ammonia and the prices are higher worldwide. And this is the 8% which is resting. That means you have an internal market opportunity in every country where you can start. Yes, of course, you will never start with a 10 gigs project just shipping hydrogen to Europe with 20,000 or 20 billion euros investment. You need to start from the internal market. You need to supply with pilot project your internal market. You need to be baby steps. And this is front runners are Brazil, Chile, countries which are indeed very, very running on front of us. But the thing is, you have the internal market, and this 8 to 10% of the whole demand is exposed, yes, indeed, to the CO2 footprint taxes. And this is exposed to international prices because it's being used to produce commodities. And there, Vaca Muerta is not playing a role. And the opportunity is there for the internal market. And then, yes, you can expand, you can push the limits, and then you can have customers abroad. And then, yes, of course, you have your train or your ship shipping larger amounts of hydrogen, green hydrogen to the region and to the world.
Yeah, Chris, I want to add to Alejandro, that's where the governments take a very important role. No, I can do like an example. I can take like as an example what happened with the renewable energy. At some point, the price of the renewable energy was so high that it was not competitive with the, let's say, thermal energy. No, but then the technology made those prices to go down, and the government took initiatives to create the demand for a renewable energy. For example, in Argentina, when the new renewable energy law was issued, it created a demand for the large users because it created the commitment or the obligation of large users to use part or consume part of their energy in renewable energy. And large users were subject or are subject to penalties if they don't comply with the percentage of energy that they have to consume in clean energy. No? And the other role that the government should take is in terms of incentives. No? You have to give incentives not only to the producer of hydrogen or renewable energy, but also to the demand. As Alejandro was saying, the government has to put the incentives for the demand to be there. For example, Argentina has a very important automobile industry. And if the government doesn't give those industries the incentives, the fiscal incentive to import components to build up new cars based on hydrogen, or reduce taxes not only to the producers of the car, but to the consumers or the buyers of the car, the end users like companies or individuals, that is not going to happen. You are not going to have the market for that because it's not going to be competitive. And as I don't know if you know, for example, in matters of mobility, the builders of the producers of cars are creating cars that can go so far as 1,000 kilometers based on hydrogen. So they are more efficient than those run by fuel. No, so the technology is bringing the bridge between, let's say, fossil energy and hydrogen more closer. And if the governments help to get that gap closer enough, you will build the demand for the production of hydrogen.
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute there. So I thought I'd just move on to Carolina, because we talked about Peru being right kind of at the start of its journey here with regards to hydrogen. I just wondered and also Alejandro talked about baby steps. And, pilot projects. What are the immediate next steps that Peru needs to take to establish, a hydrogen capability? Carolina.
Thank you, Chris. As I mentioned before, in Peru right now, we have some solar energy plants, but they are used basically for rural electrification in the country. And the wind energy plants we have are already 5 have been implemented, and we have 2 new parks. All these plants are basically located in the north and south. So we have some infrastructure for renewable resources. So as Newton mentioned, we need to see what is going to happen once what is happening in the internal market, what is happening in Peru. We currently have no regulatory framework for green hydrogen nor for hydrogen in general. So we need, within those baby steps, we need to analyze what are the investment costs, basically construction, technology, labor, etc. If there is or not an internal market in the country, we have been known in the world for our mining resources, and we have some world-class mines in the country, and that would be the first considerations for one of the first considerations for a country. And linked with that, what would the benefits be for the potential investors, and what the government will be willing to grant in favor of these investors to expose themselves into investing in such a new opportunity market here, and what are the guarantees that the government is going to give them. But also the government needs to define what kind of participation in this market it needs or wants to have. Is it going to be via private-public participation projects, or via auction systems, as it is working with the renewables market now? So we need to establish a regulatory framework. Then we need a period of transition before we can use hydrogen technologies first in our country, and then see if it's possible, as Sebastian said, to follow these steps of Chile and think about exporting this energy abroad, taking in consideration what are the needs of other countries, as Alejandro said, especially in Europe. So we have a long road ahead of us, and I think it is necessary for Peru to start thinking about what are going to be our next steps to be considered, at least in the region, as one important producer of hydrogen, considering that we have renewable resources in abundance.
Right, thank you, Carolina. So just via the Q&A button to Nilton, just to talk a little bit about Brazil. Nilton, you talked about the fact that renewables plays a very large part in the electricity generation in Brazil, and also Brazil is very important as an oil and gas producer. Do you really see any role for hydrogen as an export product for Brazil, or is it just going to be a more narrow, specific UK? You talked about things like ammonia. Where do you really see the future of hydrogen? Because obviously for Chile, it's seen as something strategic and as an export product. Do you really think it will be the same for Brazil?
Oh, time will say, right, Chris? But my view is that at least in the beginning, it will be mostly focused on internal market, especially on projects like this one of conversion of ammonia, and etc. I do believe that the government itself saying that probably blue hydrogen will be something more relevant in the next 10 years because of our natural gas production. However, I don't discard it completely export, because one of the projects, there are actually 3 projects ongoing right now, at least in studies and discussions phases, And one of those is actually export related. The production would be 100% exported to Europe. That's the idea from the companies that are discussing there. So I don't completely overrule the possibility of exportation, but I think we have a very big market and a lot of need for energy. So I think that we'll probably be seeing a more relevant part here in the internal markets. I don't know if Alejandro that actually holds the technical aspect, he disagrees with me, but I think that for Brazil, most likely the local market will be more important, at least in early phases here.
Alejandro, do you want to add something?
Yes, well, the technical, let's say two things, two short comments here. Brazil has a very important and huge internal market of green hydrogen. I would say for Brazil, the industry, the chemical sector is really huge. It's very particular in this case for a country. And the technical issue Nilton mentions is nowadays the challenge. The challenge were several in the past. One of them is the green hydrogen is to supply with variable generation electrolyzers. This was an issue many years ago. Nowadays, the variable generation is not an issue. It has been solved due to power electronics. To step in all the technical things, how many electrolyzers and install capacity you can install in a region concentrated, adding racks one to the other, achieving volumes of electrolyzing capacity. I would say these are the two challenges. One of them is overcame already, but the other one is part of the current industrial development we have now, assuming availability of wind, sun, and water in some cases.
And Alejandro, it'd probably be useful as well to talk about where we are in regards to the technical or technological challenges of export of green hydrogen. You know, I'm talking about shipping and also ammonia as well, shipping, pipelines, that kind of stuff. Where are we at the moment with those kind of developments?
Well, there is nowadays several companies like Mitsubishi working in a already patent ship, which let's say from when you see them from the outside are similar from those large ships for exporting gas, but let's say technologically are different. You need to understand that the hydrogen is by lighter and it's more complex to compress, to liquefy, to transport it. I think we are now in a time frame where you have two things. The internal market is trucks and trains, and for these two transport technologies, we are there. It's enough. I would say we need in front of us 5 years to 7 years until we have those large ships crossing the oceans with hydrogen from one country to another. Let's say if you dream to full hydrogens tanks with I don't know, Patagonian wind, and to export the wind from Patagonia or the wind from Chile or even the wind from Brazil, Peru to other countries in the world. We are not that far, but nowadays those ships are in construction.
Great, thank you. Question for the fact that Argentina is looking to create a roadmap by the end of this year for green hydrogen, and the fact that the country has had a hydrogen-related law on the books for a long time. What's needed from both a legislation and an incentive point of view in Argentina to develop the the green hydrogen economy beyond the pilot project that you have so far?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we need a robust legal framework. No, first of all, we would require to have a new legislation in respect of hydrogen. That, as I said before, the legislation in place expires this year, and one of the issues that should be changed from the current legislation is that any hydrogen project right now requires the authorization of the authorities to be operated and to be developed. No, the bill that is now at the Congress, issued by Congressman Mena, changes that and specifically states that the new hydrogen projects would not require prior governmental authorization. No, the other piece of legislation that we will require is a fiscal stability legislation that say they should assure investors that in terms of new taxes, there are not going to be changes for let's say for 15 years. And this is a problem in Argentina, no? Because in Argentina you have the national government, the provinces, and the municipalities, no? Many of these stability, let's say, programs, fiscal stability programs, fail because the provinces or the municipalities do not adhere to the national legislation, because, let's say, income tax or VAT is ruled by the national government, but the provinces also have a tax over gross incomes of the companies, and they are very burdensome. So this new hydrogen strategy would require a consensus between the national government and the provinces, at least the provinces in the south, where we see that these projects have more feasibility to be built. No? And the other part of legislation is the one related to the demand that I was saying before. You need to put incentives also in the demand. You need to take some taxes out from the demand, from the consumers of hydrogen, automobile companies, let's say industries, with reductions in imports duties or reduction in taxes, income tax, VAT. So you need a whole package, because the former law was not thought in terms of, let's say, a total framework that would involve all the value chain of production and consumption of hydrogen in Argentina. And last but not least, as Alejandro was saying, these projects need a huge scale, no, in order to reduce costs. We are talking about projects above 1 gigawatt, no? Those are huge projects, and they require, obviously, a lot of financing, and the cost of financing nowadays in Argentina is very, very, very high. That is because Argentina has not yet arranged its debt with the Paris Club or the IMF, and this, I think, will not happen until after the elections. And the other piece that would require for investors to come and invest in projects in Argentina is the one related to exchange controls. Since 2019, Argentina has in place new exchange control regulations that limit the inflow and outflow of money from and in Argentina. So we need the government to make that regime more flexible. There are some signs that the regime is getting more flexible. For example, nowadays Argentina is discussing a new hydrocarbons law where the government internally is discussing a scheme where the exports or the revenues coming from exports of hydrocarbons, at least in a very high percentage, more than 50%, can be freely disposed by the participants. And recently we have a new incentive decree, 234, for exports that is aimed at projects of more than 100 million in investments, and that regime allows investors to keep up to 20% of their revenues outside from Argentina and use them to pay dividends or to pay financing. So at the end of the day, what we need in Argentina, and that is very difficult in Argentina for the political situation as well, is to have a consensus between all the participants, let's say the provinces, the national government, the municipalities, and have a robust legal framework that would address all these issues. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to attract investment, this kind of investment that require huge amount of money. No?
Thanks, Ricardo. I think it's worthwhile comparing the situation of Argentina to Chile. Maybe we can talk to Sebastian about this. There's going to be, I'd be interested to know how much financing, if you look at the national strategy that Chile has published, how much financing is required for these projects, and how much does Chile expect that to come from international financing or international participants, and what are they doing to encourage the involvement or participation of international investors in these kind of projects, Sebastian?
Thank you for the question. And as Ricardo was saying, I think a key element for this type of long-time investment is to have a stable regulatory regime. Chile is working on that, and that's why we are taking these steps of having this policy, a high-level policy, then to create the authority in charge of the regulation, which was a thing that Milton said that was not clear, because you have this combination of ministries, and now we have the Ministry of Energy running the thing, and we have this financing part. I think as a country, we try to think that the public investment will be, or the public financing will be the initial part of the process, but we try to think that will not be the only solution or the long-time solution, because these are projects that needs to be economically feasible, need to have this off-take agreement, as that Alejandro said before, and so from an economic point of view, they need to make sense. So my view is that we have this Corfo program to have these first projects in place in Chile, because you need to show result factor plans, as was the case in the wind farms back 8 or 9 years ago, and the solar power plants and so on. But I think at the end, the idea is to show a very strong industry that could obtain financing abroad, a combination probably between, let's say, VAT local financing, and then also a senior loan abroad, and towards that goal, I think that if you see the renewable energy experience, because at the end, lenders are looking for opportunities, first in run of the river, wind farms, solar, mining, and if those lenders had a good experience in the other industries, probably they will be more inclined to participate in this new segment. So if I see, as an example, the solar projects, the big ones, and also the portfolio small ones that we are seeing nowadays in Chile, we are seeing international lenders involved, funds. We are also seeing national banks also participating in the mix, in the VAT combination. So my expectation is that we will, or our goal, I think, is to create the basis for a market that will not work under a subsidy scheme, but under an efficiency scheme, and of course, trying to have this economic and legal stability with a clear brand or sign of a green, sustainable industry. I think that is not only just an extra today is a key element to find good off-takers, to find lenders. And so, because the people, as I said, as I think Alejandro said before, even though we can talk about gray, blue, green, at the end, I think even though the atom is the same, the product is completely different. You are looking for another market of countries or companies that are trying to reduce their footprint to reach neutrality or zero emissions by X year, and that's the type of strategy that will allow you to differentiate, to conquer some markets, and to obtain international financings, I think, in the future.
And I want to ask you each to just think about, just a couple of takeaways that you were doing, like closing comments, if you like, to think about what people who've been watching this webinar should really take away from it. But before I do that, I just wanted to follow up on something you just said, Sebastian, with Alejandro. Alejandro, you made a big point of saying and so did Sebastian, it doesn't matter whether it's green or blue, it just needs to be economic or make economic sense for someone to want to buy that hydrogen because it's has the right price. How long do you think it is before hydrogen from renewable sources from the LATAM region does not need any form of subsidy to be on a kind of economic even playing field with other sources of hydrogen?
Well, Chris, I think a first statement brings to my mind a time frame between 5 and 10 years until we are in the same level in countries where you are comparing apples with apples. This is one thing. The other thing is it does matter right now if this green or blue, because in many cases it's green cheap hydrogen. It's not an option. Must to be green, it must to be cheap. And the word in English is must to be, is not should. It's a must. And conditions like the German rules for green hydrogen are pretty clear. They are saying green countries with green economies producing green hydrogen, not coal countries making a business, an island, and exporting a little bit and making another new business, but their life is not green. When you compare prices of hydrogen, you reach prices 3.5, 2.7, 2.5, 4 point something in this range, the kilogram, depending on the country, depending on the capacity factor. Of course, I am just roughly speaking. So you are not that far from 1.9, 1.2, 1.5. We are really not that far. And when you go to an economy of scales where you really are producing huge amount of hydrogen, I think we are much more closer to the goal than we even think nowadays. We have internal markets to supply, we have regional markets to supply, and we have offshore and overseas markets to supply. And this kind of time frame to supply those markets are the same time frame which are going to allow us to develop the transport technologies for those distances, short, medium, and long range distances. And at the same time are markets where we need a certain development in the prices also, in the technology allowing the capacity, the economy of scale.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. I just wanted to pass it around the panel until one last comment. Just one or two things they think people watching this should take away. Sebastian, do you want to start?
Okay, I think that my takeaway from Chile, at least, is that we are in an agreement that the green hydrogen time has arrived. It's not just looking 20, 30 years ahead. We need to set the basis now. And we are seeing regulation happening. We are seeing projects happening. Of course, it is a continuous challenge. It's not that we have our own problems, our own challenges, but I think that to look or to be part of this second step of our energy transition, it's a good laboratory to see. And I think that Chile, as I said before, is trying to mix this idea of having an efficient industry with economics drivers, but also a sustainable economy. And that's why our national strategy has this last name of Green Hydrogen National Strategy. And that's why, due to our resources, due to our renewables, but that's where we are now. And I think that will be great to keep sharing experience, because probably we will have some good things, and we will also learn bad lessons that will improve the ongoing process that we are in.
Carolina, any last comments from you?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Basically, we're in the middle of a new wave regarding energy production and technology implementation. And for us in Peru, as a country, we need to take this decision thoughtfully. We need to thought about it, implement correctly, and hopefully we can use and hopefully export it also in an efficient and proper manner, which is, I think, that is the most important goal for our country in this new era of energy.
Thank you. Ricardo?
Thank you, Chris. Well, as Sebastian was saying, the race for hydrogen has started. There are many countries in the world, like Germany, Japan, South Korea. They are looking for the next years who will supply them with hydrogen. Argentina, in this case, has a huge opportunity to be one of the largest players in the world. As I said, Argentina has one of the best natural resources in the world for producing hydrogen, but Argentina has to solve some internal issues like its economical situation, and has to create the incentives and the right legal framework for this to happen. That's the challenge for Argentina, and I hope that this second semester we can have a new strategy for hydrogen in Argentina. Thanks a lot.
Makes a lot of sense. Milton, any last?
Thanks, Chris. Well, first, thank everyone for the chat. I think it was a very nice chat. My takeaway, the takeaways here for Brazil are sit tight. The next chapter is coming. We should be receiving news from the National Hydrogen Plan very soon. It was expected for mid-July, so it's a hot topic right now. I completely agree with the others. The race for hydrogen has begun. I think Brazil has a particular scenario here that's different than Latin America, which is our local market and our huge supply of natural gas as well. So I think that blue hydrogen will, at least in this first part, will play a very big role. And I think, yeah, and yet there's still funds for research and development. So that's something that companies should be aware that this fund exists. There are some rules for you to actually put your hands on the pot, but for sure they're available, and we're more than glad to clarify if anyone has further questions on that.
And finally, Alejandro, any last comments?
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks to all colleagues here, Carolina, and all the colleagues in the panel. Final remark from my point of view is always the word potential. We should not always speak about potential. We should work hands-on. The countries in our region have different challenges: economic, regulatory, political challenges. The technology is there. The technology is solved, ready to be dropped on the ground. It's from my point of view that the projects for green hydrogen are closer than we even think in terms of investment, in terms of possibilities, and it's a matter of commitment between in our own mindsets sometimes to be sure that the potential is not anymore a potential, it's a reality. And the main driver for this is the off-taker. You have an off-taker, a guy with the money in the hand saying, I need this product, I need to buy it, just produce it for me. And it's going to release credits, it's going to release technology, it's going to release money and financial incentives. Thank you very much.
Okay, very much for all of you for watching and enjoying this webinar. Obviously, the London Stock Exchange, it was an honor for us to be involved, and we want to be part of the, the financing solution, be it equity, debt, or investment funds for financing these hydrogen projects in Latin America, and we hope that we can play an active part in that. Please reach out to me and members of the panelists on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect and discuss this further. So it just remains for me to say thank you to Guerrero Olivos for the opportunity to moderate this webinar. Marco Zavala in particular, thank you for your support on this. And I'd just like to say thank you to Sebastian, Carolina, Ricardo, Nilton, and Alejandro for participating. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for
Pleasure.
your time.
Bye.
Bye.